Renato suggested changing the music.
Yeah.
But he liked the music that we use for the short horror stories at the end. And I listened to it. I was like, nope. So thanks for the suggestion. It's noted, but I just don't feel it.
Yeah, but we're not really sticking to anything
No.
crazy hard. We're totally open. Like
Yeah.
something pops up.
Maybe I'll teach myself guitar and write it myself.
Mm,
That's probably not gonna happen though. So we're not gonna count on that.
Maybe.
I just put out the last episode. Episode 31 was about going to South Dakota and visiting with Don Ty,
Yeah.
this poet.
This guy sounds awesome.
Yeah. And the one before that was with Nato, and we had a good discussion too. So I don't know how much of this stuff you've heard, and I don't want to repeat anything. So we'll see.
It's hard
we'll
not
see.
to repeat ourselves. It's all good.
We'll see where it goes. But yeah, man, what's going on with you?
I'm running for president. I
Still-
figure if Hillary and Trump can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. God damn.
I've never been convicted of crimes. I've never lied about emails.
All
You
good
know,
stuff.
just good stuff. You know, I got some good. I've served. I think I can make a difference. Me and Gary Johnson are gonna team up, and
Yeah, he'd be the man to
Johnson
do it
and
with.
Johnson for president. Get the fuck out of here! Come on,
Yeah.
come on, man. Who
Yeah.
doesn't want that?
You should contact him.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's pretty much where I'm headed in my life. No, man, same old shit. Just at that weird point in my young life where I'm deciding where I want to be, where I want to settle, what kind of job I want to have, what's my ideal path, what's the path I'll settle for. You know, just I think everyone goes through it, right?
Well, I think what's awesome is you have me to help.
Yeah.
Cause I'm like,
That-
yeah.
that
I was
is
like, I was like, if it was my life, like this is what I would do. Like, what do you want? I think that's what it is figuring out what you want and then realizing you could do it. And like even bad scenario, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, just what you want is your goal to make a lot of money, and you know why is that the goal? I mean, what do you want from life, dude? I was on the trip, and one of the big breakthroughs I had was like, man, if I just appreciate every day and I just get closer with my family and do all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter if I have a bestseller. It doesn't matter what happens with writing. It doesn't matter what happens with anything. I was like, if I'm enjoying my day and I'm making a positive influence in the world, like then that's cool. Like that should be my goal. That should be everyone's goal. Just live, you know.
Yeah.
Do the stuff that you love to do. I love writing. That's why I'm going to continue to do it. But like talking with Don, you know, he doesn't write much poetry anymore. He's like, I've already used up all those words, or he's already released all those emotions, or maybe just not the same passion. It's like I've always said I want to write till I die, but I like being able to say, oh, I'm gonna write as long as I enjoy it, and then I'll try something else.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's what was cool, seeing you kind of knowing what you want, but then also at the same time like, well, no, and that's gonna be my 3-year plan, or in 5 years or 10 years, because I don't want this or I want this, and but I think just you getting to see like, oh yeah, I can do this. This is what I'm gonna do, and once you're starting to write it down, I was like, so yeah, so everyone knows, in 6 months, Anthony's gonna be up in Oregon.
For sure. That's exactly what I want.
Yeah, or that's the rough time frame, but
Yeah.
you know, even putting months to it and picturing it, and it's gonna be dope. He's gonna have like a yoga retreat, a jiu-jitsu facility.
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna
it's
make
just-
it happen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, it's the common. Well, I don't know if it's common, but it's the worry of being young and not having a sure plan and fearing the unknown, and just, you know, like having a foot in and out of like the business world or the career set jobs where you need to be there, get a 401k, versus this newfound kind of path that people are going down, which is, life's short. Live your life, do what you want to do, and money's gonna come and go. But
yeah,
you know, and I'm lucky enough to have some pretty good benefits behind my back. So yeah, just taking the dive, I guess. Me and my partner.
yeah. No, I think it'd be awesome. That's what I wanted to. I want to eventually move there, and so this will be a cool place. Like we'll vacation with you guys. I'll come up. I want to do writing retreats.
You guys aren't.
We're not welcome?
Your
Oh,
people
shit.
aren't well. That's my goal. It was to
Damn
like
it.
buy land so I can say that your
Yeah.
kind isn't welcome here.
Yeah,
That's the ultimate goal. We have a lot of plans, man. Hopefully, or no, you know, I think it's gonna happen. I know I want to settle out there, and California's crazy. It's just,
yeah. No, man.
Southern California.
I told you I did my research. I checked out all the survivalist handbooks and everything, and I was like, okay, where's the safest place for all these different circumstances? That was one of the best places. I like its stance on a lot of things. So no, and I've been up there, and it's just beautiful. I was like, that's what I want from my family. I want to have seasons. I want to enjoy it. I want to be outdoors. Going to South Dakota, dude. I thought I was expecting like Deadwood, which isn't far. So I was just expecting like just desert and dirty and all that. But dude, it was beautiful. And the first thing Livy said was, "I want to live here."
Yeah.
It's like it's so green. So it's like, yeah, that's what I want. I want to be able to breathe. I want to be able to see the mountains. I want to be able to do that. And so that's the getaway plan. But yeah, if we get you going up there first, you'll
I was close a couple years ago to just splitting and going up there and living really really low key, and but no, this is the situation. It's gonna work out better.
Yeah, I got a lot of cool stuff. So besides seeing that and seeing, yeah, 100%, that's for sure what I want to do. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of LA. I want to get out of traffic.
That's crazy.
I want something better. So yeah, and it's cool. I know it's gonna happen.
I think me and my lady are taking a trip up there either tomorrow night or Saturday night.
And start seeing the exact area.
Start staying out there all week. And
what's cool too is there's already the 10th Planets out there too, and other schools, but for sure like those guys, and so that'll be cool. I want to talk about something. I do this. I'm pretty impulsive. I get excited about stuff. I don't know if I told you, but I found an old novel. I think I was looking for something. I was going to start working on the fantasy thing for a little bit while I have. I'm taking a small break from Unlocking the Cage. I finished the first round and first draft, and I just want to let it sit for a little bit while I read some studies and just focus on some fiction for a little bit. It won't be that long of a break. So I was looking at the fantasy stuff, but then I came across this old novel. It was about these kids. Did I tell you about it? Okay, it's called It's Not How You Play the Game. And I looked at it, it's like 103,000 words, so a full novel. Like if I worked on it, it would be easy. Like the writing was terrible, but I could easily fix it up. The overall idea I thought could work. And so I was excited about it, and that's what I took on the plane with me. And so I'm reading on the plane, and I keep thinking about how I can fix it. I'm telling Livia some of the stuff that's happening, and she's starting to get grossed out. She's like, "Don't tell me anymore." And I was like, "But the
how
book."
old is Livia again? 10, right?
She's 8.
Shut up! I missed that all the time.
But she's reading at a much higher level. Like she reads fantasy novels all the time, and so I stopped telling her about some of these deaths. But then I realized it. I think it was after this might have been my second night there, and I eventually had to put down. I was like, I can't do this because, dude, it's pretty much it was me. It was a combination of like Stand By Me meets Lord of the Flies meets Rambo. Like I forgot just how brutal. Holy shit, dude. Holy shit. It's just all these kids killing each other. And I was like, how do I make this believable where they would actually go, kill each other like this, like getting torched and setting traps and like
Hunger Games almost type.
Yeah, pretty gnarly stuff, dude. Like yeah, like the Hunger Games.
I'm sure the book was way gnarlier than the films because they're shooting arrows and kids and teenagers, whatever.
Yeah, so I just realized, I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, I got limited time. I was excited about it because I looked at it. I was trying to be realistic. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this in a short amount of time. It won't take that much time from other stuff, and I'll have another book out. But I was like, no, I'm not even going to spend, even if I had to spend 3 months to make it into something, and I could probably make it into a big book, I don't even want to put that out there. And so, dude, I threw it away. I told Don, he took pictures. He actually wrote some poetry about it, about me throwing away. And he's like, it's art. Once you create art, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. You were telling me about that.
Yeah. So I was like, that was kind of cool. It was kind of refreshing to be able to do that. Now I already deleted it from my hard drives too. So I was like, anything.
Oh, so it's gone.
Oh, it's gone. Yeah. I was like, because anything that I needed to, that I was trying to write in that book, already came out in short stories or already came out somewhere, and it was, I could see who all the characters were. I could see what all the kind of issues I was trying to deal with. Yeah, but I was in a dark place when I was writing that. So that was 2003 was when I rewrote it. So it was old. Yeah. Not that I'm not in a dark place.
I'm just that Rambo, like Lord of the Flies. I was with you.
Yeah.
Lost Boys. I was like, okay. dark, but
no, I'm
then
just
the Rambo came in. I was like, oh
yeah.
shit.
And I stopped at the point where the dude's little brother dies, and it's because of him. He started this big old war. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to write about that, or not like that. Um, so that was cool. And then I don't know if I told you. Oh, see about what do you think about this idea?
I love it.
Yeah, you better say that. That's why you make the big bucks.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, now we just got to work on timing. What the fuck was I saying?
See, it must have been a great plan.
No, that was a great plan.
No.
No. So one of the things, because Anthony's not going to watch the podcast. I don't want to listen to me either. I don't blame him. So I'll fill you in.
Watch ourselves or
No. Last week's with Don.
No, but I'll listen.
Will you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is it out already?
It came out today. And so
see,
I didn't know.
Yeah, come on.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
listen.
I didn't know if you'd listen. I wouldn't listen. But
I'll fast forward everything you say and listen just to Don.
That's a good idea.
But go ahead, yeah. What was a good idea?
So while I'm over there, I'm all excited about it's not how you play the game. So I'm reading this whenever I'm on a new book like that. 100% my focus is on that, and but with this, I think it was the first night we were there. He had given me his poetry manuscript. It's poetry therapy. He was one of the first licensed poetry therapists in the U.S. He worked with kids. He worked with mental health patients. He worked with all kinds of people. Saw great results. But I'm just reading it. But I have my stack of notes that I want to start. I want to finish my book because I'm excited about it. I don't want to really read this thing, but I'll glance over it. And then I started doing some of the exercises in it. And then, holy shit, dude. It was like 3 hours that I was writing. I was crying. I was just like, it was like super powerful. It was similar to the writing experience I had at Esalen, where I had like a big breakthrough. So it was cool. It was pretty dope. So that's what we talked about on that podcast. Now you don't have to listen to it. But I told Don that, because he's been trying to get to the VA. He was really upset that, because he's I think he was 20 years in the Air Force, done all kinds of cool shit. Just awesome guy. But he's written to the VA several times saying, hey, this is something that can be offered for guys with PTSD. It would be huge for him.
Man, anything's going to stop the flow of pills.
Yeah.
I
know.
There's way less money involved with poetry and all that than there is with pills, so.
Yeah. No,
it sucks, but it's falling on deaf ears, yeah.
I told him that you would give it a try. So I volunteered your ass, so you'll do some poetry. We're not going to do it today. Another day you'll do it.
I'm actually down to do some poetry, because I think, hip-hop is somewhat like poetry, and a lot of my favorite rappers, if you take their lyrics and just write it on paper, it's simple poetry. Yeah. You just put a beat behind it, so... Yeah.
No, that's with all music.
Pretty much. Yeah.
One of the cool things one of the techniques was just write down a short story, like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs, and I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I just started looking through Twisted Reunion, and right on the very first page, like the first paragraph, I was like, that's a dope poem right there. I was like, if it's chopped up right, and I'll change it a little bit. And I asked him, I was like, what if I do this?
So with the sheets.
The messy sheets, yeah.
That's good.
And just about him, the girl he called Laura, it's like he doesn't even know her name. So I'm gonna look through that, see which ones I could turn into, and so we'll just have some really, really dark and twisted poetry, and maybe we'll have some nice touching stuff too. I mean, I got that side.
I think you're a lover,
but it's usually about people dying. But with that, dude, I was another cool thing. I stuck with my promise that this trip was going to be all about Olivia.
Oh yeah.
And on Wednesday, I got something from the Horror Writers Association about a indie producer that's looking for TV series, and so I submitted, and then they wrote back to me saying, yeah, the guy's very interested and wants he wants a detailed synopsis, and so I tried to work on it a lot, and all I needed was probably maybe another hour to do it on the plane. I was like. And I told myself, I had promised Olivia, I was like, I'm not bringing my computer with me. And so I was like, oh, well, it's just not going to get done. And so I didn't turn it in until we got back, which was like on Tuesday. And I wrote to him, I was like, if it, hopefully it's not too late. And of course, it wasn't a big deal. It was just in my head. But
of course,
it was just always a good thing. And it didn't bother me at all while I was gone. I was like, no, the important thing is, like, I'm here right now for her. There's, when she wanted to do her reading, then that's when I would do my work, or I'd be talking with Dawn. But otherwise, it's just all about her, and it paid off because, man, she's just even more loving than she already was.
Sounds like it was an awesome trip. She was fencing and singing and
yeah,
greenery awesome. And yeah,
you know,
man, sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah, just being influenced by him. So it was a cool thing. There was something else.
That dude sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably listen to the podcast.
Yeah, no, he definitely inspired me to do a lot of stuff.
I just love hearing about like vets that just get out and live these crazy, awesome lives. It just gives me hope.
Yeah.
I can just go out there and do shit, you know?
Oh, so back to me. No, he's yeah, that's gonna be my catch line. Is that what it's called?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was like, I wasn't even listening to what you said. I don't care about the military like that. No, I think it is. I think it's super important. So, but what I'm going to help him do is, he has this manuscript that he never did anything with. So we're going to turn it into a book, get it on, even if it's a free book or whatever or 99 cents on Amazon and all the other places, and publish it and get people to try the poetry, because I was like, you're going to help people. People are going to buy this. I'm going to write the foreword. That's going to make tons of people buy it. But also, you know, it helped me. But
you never know, man. You like I said, you might put all your efforts into this horror writing, but then it might be short poems and short kid stories to get you where you need to go or where you're gonna be, or who knows, man.
Yeah. No, it was fun. So we'll see what happens with it. And god damn it, I forgot it again.
No, we were.
It was really good. Oh, so we're talking about what I'm gonna work on. So I'm definitely doing Try Not to Die and Brightside. I don't have much work on that. As soon as I get a break, well, as soon as Unlocking's finished, that's what I'm going to. I'm gonna finish that. I also have a friend I'm collaborating with on a Try Not to Die at this heavy metal festival. So he's gonna.
Is Coachella coming actually? Is that Coachella?
I was like, I'm finding people that are passionate about other authors that are good, quality writers, that have an interest in something. I have another person I want to do haunted houses with. So it's like whatever the person likes, that's what I want to write about. If it's something,
so many avenues there.
And if it's something that I'm really interested in, then maybe I'll take the lead on it. But I want to like help create and guide and just put out quality work, man. And it's gonna be cool, and it should help other people's careers too. Not that I'm anything big, but I was like, the more I put out there, the more I'll be discovered, and I think the quality is good enough to. I told someone the other day, I was like, I want my writing spread like a STD. Like a really
bad one, like herpes, that shit stays with you.
Yeah, like you gotta go. Yeah, you're always looking for the
cure. Mark's gonna have his Tellius writing seminar up in Oregon once I get out there too. So
yeah,
there you go, dangerous writing.
Yeah, no, we'll bring in the masters, Tom, and we'll have Tom and Sage teach. Because dude, I need to learn, dude. I mean, that's the thing. I say I could put out a good book now. I think I'm confident saying that. But that's because of editing and everything else. Like, I am not anywhere near where I want to be as a writer. I got so much to learn. But that's fun. I realized, dude, I wanna learn. I want to do different things. It was cool to go horseback riding. I was like, that'd be cool to learn, how to really handle a horse and all that. I don't know if handle's the right word, is it? Maybe wrangle.
I think it's breaking a horse when you're gonna. Like when he's wild. I think, you got to break a wild horse and then.
I would like a pre-broke one, please.
Yeah, you have to pay. Yeah, I'm not a horse whisperer.
Yeah, no. Oh, all right. Here's what I was trying to get to.
It came back to you, huh?
Coming back to me again. No, and we told.
No, the thought came back though.
Oh, it did. Well, because I have it written down, so I look down here. That's why I like not having video on. But no, I want to talk about what I'm passionate about now on this little break. And it's kind of funny. Like, to me, it's not something I ever thought I would really write. Well, it's the first thing I ever wrote. I think it was just, I tried starting a fantasy novel, didn't do anything with it. I recently found it and I read through it, most of it, and it's just garbage. I was like, okay, if there's a couple cool little things I'll take from it, but probably not. So I just threw that away. I'm deleting that too. But the fantasy novel I'm gonna do with Olivia, and I told her, I said, hey, because dude, she devours fantasy novels. Like, she reads
every time I see her, she's just
dude. They're like 500 pages, and she'll do 2 a week. If she has time. So that's all she wants to do. And she loves it. So I'm having her like she's doing the colors of the dragon. We're really like she's creating it with me. I have these questions like, okay, what are you reading in these fantasy novels? Like, what have you ever heard of this? As because I don't want to copy anything. I don't want to bite anything. I was like, and I told her, I said, look, I said, you're an expert. You're becoming an expert on fantasy novels. You're reading all the bestsellers. You're reading all the quality stuff. I said, I think I'm a good writer. I was like, we do it together and we create something that's awesome. And so, dude, that's another project that's gonna be pretty cool. So, and I was like, and if we can make it, and I was like, and if we can make it into a bestseller, which we easily could, I think, especially with the plan. I was like, man, I didn't tell her this part, but I was like, you won't have to work. No, it would just help her. It would help her. It'd be nice.
With as much as she reads, man, and yeah, you're grooming a little best-selling author.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that she likes, but yeah, even if she is just simply, not doing much of the writing, but she's helping me create the scenes. I mean, we're talking about the girl that's going to be, really based off of her and what she would love to be. She wanted to be like an archer type and with some magic, and so it's really fun writing this character, and especially because she's going to know some jits. It's going to be, it's going to be some kind of martial arts. But it's gonna be dope. And then she has this cape that she can use too, and so I'm gonna satisfy the Gi people as well. It's not just all about 10th Planet around here.
No, we're non-biased, non-binary.
Yeah, because that was even a question though. I was like, all right, I was like, how necessary is the cape? Should she use it? I was like, would it be just more fun just destroying people with your body?
Yeah, but at least when you're at night, your cape keep you warm. Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't sure how much fun it would be, but no, I'm enjoying it. And last night even, I was gonna start back on Unlocking the Cage, and I went through the notes. I printed up everything that we filled up a journal with all these notes about the book, and I typed it all out. I was looking at it, and man, I wrote until I fell asleep. And I even took it upstairs. I put it in bed, and I was just trying to keep writing. I fell asleep.
Nice.
And so yeah, I know what happens, and I totally know the start of the book. I know what happens in book 1 pretty much. There's like some little things, and we have to figure out all the characters and all the. I'm starting to develop the main bad creatures.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's gonna be fun.
That
be
sounds
exciting.
fun, dude.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
So so that's what I'm working on. But yeah, I think that's it. Besides, the only other thing I saw today was that dragonfly rape.
Yeah, we learned how dragonflies. So it's funny. I come in through your backyard and I see you fiddling there, and he goes, "You ever see dragonflies have sex or something like that?" Was an odd first question. I'm like, yeah, they kind of tangle up, right? And then Mark proceeds to tell me the whole process and show me pictures of
the couple that was in my So there's these 2 dragonflies in my backyard. I had never seen dragonflies have sex before. But I figured that's what they were doing. But it looked like the male who was in front and on top had like impaled the back of her head.
Yeah.
So I was filming it and watching. I was like, oh, this could be like maybe there's a crazy death scene. Like maybe he just like. He's killing this thing because it looked like he was trying to get away.
Yeah, it looked pretty weird.
And he was going all over, and I was still taking pictures and video. And I'll share some because otherwise it's a complete waste.
You got a lot. Yeah. So all I imagined was this big dude with his shirt off on his knees, like trying to.
No, I was standing up. Yeah, it sounds like you're thinking of something totally different.
We'll
just stop you right there.
No, like squatting down, trying to zoom in, or trying to.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
You showed me like 15 pictures, dude, and I was like, "Oh, that's okay, Mark."
I was trying to get a good one.
He clearly misses Jake. Jake's gone. And he's like, "What am I gonna do with myself in the morning?"
Yeah. Oh, we do have. Oh, Jake made a special appearance earlier when you weren't in here.
Yeah.
But I interviewed him.
Killed the show. I heard.
And here it is. Yeah. I think we'll throw it in. I'm pretty pumped because, dude, he hated school. Let me set up this interview because he might not be talking and I forget. He hated school. He's saying he didn't want to go. Dude, the other day it just broke my heart. I was like, he's so sad. He's like, Daddy, I don't want to go. He wouldn't let go of me. Like he's got good grip now because, dude, I just walked. I was just walking normal, and he's just hung like holding his arms around my neck, holding on to me. And yeah, he was just crying. Wouldn't let go of his lunchbox. And then he broke down and cried. It was the first time I saw it. I think it's because of vacation, and he really missed me, and so that was tough. But then yesterday. We're walking up, and again, he's saying, "No, Daddy, I don't want to go. I just want to get my stuff away. I'm sad. It makes me sad." And his teacher told us, like, he has a good time once he's there, but it's just that initial thing. But this little kid, ran up, He's like, Jake, come and play. And then I was like, how cool is that? We go inside, and little boy like walks him away. We pats him on the back, and so now he's got a new buddy.
Nice.
And
how old is the little kid? Same age?
Yeah, I think
wow.
Maybe, yeah, he's at his table. I think so. I think 3. Probably
that kid's gonna be president one day.
Yeah. So no, thank you, Carlos. Good job, Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, but today he came home and was super happy. He didn't even want to leave school.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just cool.
Shoes were all muddy and looked like he had some good time.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I told him, because we always walk by and the mud's right there. I'm like, do you play in that? I was like, that looks awesome. Yeah, because I know they encourage kids to get dirty there, and I was like, dude, I don't know if Jen likes that I told him that. But I was like, that's what I used to always love doing. Dude, I was digging in the backyard all the time,
dude,
like every day.
Yeah. Building little jumps for our bikes or whatnot, and
I saw a picture. I got some pictures from my mom. I was like, I think I was about Jake's age, 3, in a diaper and just digging. Or no, let's say I didn't have a diaper at 3. I was probably trained, but I was just digging, like shirt off.
Well, your guys' backyard, man, that was a treasure chest for you guys, I bet, when you were a kid.
Yeah, treasure chest. Actually, it contained lots of broken, like some we dug it all up. So
I meant to your imagination, it was probably awesome. Like,
no, it was cool.
Broken bottles and syringes.
Yeah. No. But yeah, it was good stuff. But yeah, man, we got a lot done. So today was good. Even though we didn't train today, we're both lazy. Who knows? I'll do some yoga later.
No, we're just smart. We're just to our body. We're like,
yeah, dude. I've been doing physical therapy with Mike. I think professional physical therapy in Whittier. Dr. Mike Coe, and then but so that part's great, and he's working on everything. I totally trust him. Everything looks good. Like, I'm not even gonna get the MRI on my knee because I feel that good now.
Yeah,
everything's feeling pretty awesome.
You were moving good the other day.
Oh, thank you. But the trainer Chris, dude, the workouts are awesome, and they're directed at improving jiu-jitsu. Like, he was telling the other trainers, like, okay, this is his sport. Here's his stance for this sport. Here's what we're gonna try to do. Here's his problem. Yeah, here's his problem with his hips. Here's where he's weak here. Jen gets the same thing, and so, dude, like, I'm going to physical therapy for that. Like,
that's awesome.
Like everything else is cool, but that's tough. And
tailored towards your sport,
dude. Yeah. And I'm sweating. Like, it's a hard workout. And there's stuff. I told him, I was like, man, I have most of this equipment at home, and we could be doing it at home. I was like, but we're not going to. I need to go somewhere, like, because, dude, otherwise I would quit so much earlier than I'm actually going.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of stuff's no joke, and a lot of it's
that
just
encouragement and having someone to do it with you.
Yeah. So I say, yeah. So the next 6 months, that's cool, man. You leave in 6 months. I'm gonna miss you guys, but it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna go up there for riding retreats, just to write, just to hang out, just to do yoga.
I don't know, man. My prices are gonna be pretty high to rent my land, so I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So Drake, take the show, buddy.
He's knock
it out the park.
And then we always end on a short story. I don't even know what it's gonna be. Maybe we'll just call this one surprise. Well, how long do you think we recorded?
30
minutes. I say we keep this kind of shorter. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe you guys deserve a good story. Let's go with one of my favorites. A little homage to Stephen King. My favorite author. Loved him. Definitely influenced my work. In this short story, narrated by T. Quillen, Stephen King's book, The Stand, is kind of like one of the main characters. So it may or may not be evil, this particular edition. But we will go out on Little Jakey, and then that story, Book of Revelation. Peace.
What a title.
Bow.
Book of Revelation. Professor John Warrington stood in the middle of the driveway, an 8-foot-high gate towering before him. To his right was an intercom console. Its red button had faded considerably since he'd last been to this house more than 5 years ago. That was a day he would never forget, no matter how hard he tried. Not yet ready to announce himself, not sure if he'd ever be, and thinking that maybe it would be best if he'd just turn around and go home, John tried to peer through the wrought iron gate to glimpse what awaited him. But the once immaculate gate was now an impenetrable wall of ivy and brambles. The only metal showing was the sharp, rusted points that begged for blood, taunting the foolish to climb over them, hoping they'd slip and impale themselves on the menacing spikes. John wondered again what he was doing here. why he had agreed to the old man's invitation. They hadn't spoken since that day 5 years ago when Hazelwood, John's former professor, mentor, and friend, had let John know exactly what he thought of him. Not only had Hazelwood kicked John out of his house and his life, but he'd threatened John with far worse. The old man had been 70 years old then, and appeared physically incapable of carrying out the vengeance he'd threatened. But his words still echoed in John's mind. People change, John told himself. They get older. They calmed down. They realized they had jumped to conclusions and overreacted. Hazelwood had probably decided to forgive John and didn't want to take his grudge to the grave. At least that's what John tried to believe. The old man's threats replayed in his mind as John glanced over his shoulder to the car he'd left at the bottom of the winding driveway. He should be at home, sitting next to the phone. Even though he had his cell phone with him and the police had promised they would alert him immediately if there were any new developments, it didn't feel right to be away from home while Susan was missing. She'd been gone since January. John had come home one afternoon to find their front door wide open. There was one suitcase missing and some of her clothes, but John had never believed she'd packed it herself. There hadn't been a note, and Susan would never have walked out without saying goodbye. She was many things, but she was not someone who just ran. John rarely left his house since she'd vanished. He'd done nothing but pace the halls of their home, barely eating, sleeping less than a few hours at a time. The police, along with his friends and family, had encouraged John to go on living his life as best he could. They said sitting at home wouldn't bring Susan home any faster, and the last 2 months had proved their case. He knew that everyone believed Susan had left him. She was half John's age, gorgeous, and intelligent. But Susan loved him. Of that much John was certain. They were going to be married in the fall. Hazelwood's invitation was the first John had considered since Susan disappeared. His old mentor had sounded so excited on the phone that John had agreed immediately, despite his better judgment. Truthfully, John needed the distraction. There was still the nagging feeling that this wasn't a good idea. But John was out of the house now, and if he didn't go through with the visit, he would never find out what Hazelwood had to tell him. Maybe the old man wanted to apologize after all these years. Or maybe he expected one from John. Perhaps Hazelwood needed John's advice on a book. The old man would be reluctant to turn to John for assistance, especially after the so-called betrayal, but Hazelwood was getting on in years and might be desperate enough to ask for John's help. Word on campus was that Hazelwood had been living as a recluse for the past few years, rarely venturing from his property. Rumor was that he'd finally given up his search for the mysterious books he'd once dedicated his entire life to finding. John shivered against a sudden chill. Not only was he nervous about the impending reunion, but in his haste to leave the house, he hadn't thought to grab a jacket. Twilight had turned to dusk, and he found his lightweight polo shirt lacking. John pressed the button on the intercom. Almost instantly, Professor Hazelwood's voice sounded from the metal box.
"Is that you, Jonathan?"
John greeted his old mentor, surprised by the pleasantness in Hazelwood's voice. He was unable to detect any of the anger that he'd heard on their last visit.
"Then come on in, old chap,"
the professor said as the gate began to hum and slowly creak open. John took a step forward, then stopped suddenly, stunned by the full view of the professor's lawn and gardens, which had once been meticulously manicured. Now everything was overgrown or dead. Images of southern graveyards came to mind, but even those places had some order to the flora. This looked as if nature had been given free rein to do whatever it liked. Still teetering on the edge of turning around and leaving, John thought of the Beretta 9mm hidden on the top shelf of his closet at home. He'd considered bringing it after he accepted the invitation to visit the man he'd nearly destroyed. But ultimately he told himself he was being paranoid, and he left it locked in the security box. Now, whether or not the old man had been serious, John couldn't ignore the fact that Hazelwood had threatened his life the last time the two had met. The intercom buzzed, and Hazelwood's voice came across.
The tea is getting cold, Jonathan.
John scanned the grounds for the camera that was allowing the professor to monitor him. He found it hidden halfway up the pine tree to the left of the intercom. Hazelwood had been watching him the whole time. Not willing to look any more ridiculous than he already did, John started up the driveway, the gate closing slowly behind him. There was still beauty in the garden. It just had to be found. A solitary rose blooming amid the thorny brush on the left side of the driveway. A young sapling emerging from the wall of weeds to the right. Good can survive with the bad, and life goes on, John thought. But then he looked to the rotting tomato plants and realized everything comes to an end. The door to the professor's house was just ahead. Now was the time to deal with Hazelwood and see what all this was about. Susan would be fine. The black maple door opened just as John raised his hand to knock. Hazelwood appeared, dressed in a shabby dinner jacket. The yellow crest on the pocket was fraying. So was Hazelwood. Thin wisps of silver hair stuck out in every direction. He was a tiny shell of the man John had studied under nearly 2 decades ago. His back hunched, making him look like a turtle, especially the way his small head, with its beady eyes, poked forward from the collar of his shirt. Hazelwood pushed his glasses up his nose and smiled. "You can put your hand down, Jonathan, unless you mean to strike me." The old man's sly smile and questionable sense of humor worried John. He had betrayed Hazelwood's loyalty when he published The Book of Revelation, exposing the truth. He'd gained the man's trust, learned all he could about the sacred and secret tomes, and then wrote a book systematically disproving their existence. In doing so, Hazelwood's life's work was ruined. He'd still had his tenure at the university, but he'd lost all credibility. John hadn't set out to deliberately hurt the old man. He simply saw the fallacy in what Hazelwood espoused. At the time he was researching and writing it, John had told himself that Hazelwood would be dead before his book hit the market. But he'd obviously been mistaken, and the book's publication had crushed Hazelwood. Now the old man was smiling up at John as if nothing bad had happened between them. John lowered his hand and scratched at the scraggly, unkempt beard he'd been meaning to shave for several weeks. "Good to see you, Professor. You look well."
"Thank you, Jonathan. I would say the same, but then you'd know I was lying."
Before John could respond, Hazelwood continued.
"But that is to be expected. I read about Susan's disappearance. Are there any new developments?"
John could only shake his head.
"Oh, that's a shame. I did enjoy her company."
Hazelwood moved out of the doorway and waved John inside.
"I don't want to waste any more of your time than I need to. I heard you're writing another book, and I wouldn't want to impede your progress."
John winced at the dig, then entered the house, and waited while Hazelwood closed the door behind them. John admitted, "I haven't written a single word since she disappeared."
"I'm sorry to hear that."
Hazelwood shuffled down the hallway and motioned for John to follow. He led him into the bookcase-lined study where they used to meet every week to pore over manuscripts and letters from antiquity. Hazelwood pointed John to the seat at the head of a long oak table. John walked behind the chair and studied Hazelwood's emotionless face. "What's this about, if you don't mind my asking?"
"Actually, I do. It's a surprise. Now have a seat while I fetch the tea."
John wanted to protest. The idea of a surprise made him feel ill. But there was no sense in pushing Hazelwood. The old man would talk when he was ready. He'd learned that lesson 1,000 times over the years. Might as well take a seat and relax. A few minutes later, Hazelwood re-entered the study pushing a small bronze cart. After pouring the tea and maneuvering the cart into a corner of the room, Hazelwood said,
"I let go of the help, in case you were wondering."
Instead of saying that he had gathered that much from the garden, John simply nodded and took a sip of the Da Hang Bao tea, a treat which he hadn't had in 5 years. It tasted just as delicious and exotic as he remembered. Hazelwood shuffled to the other side of the table and took a seat opposite John. Looking over the top of his steaming mug, he studied John's face. John waited for as long as he could. "What is it, Arthur?" he asked impatiently, foregoing his usual formalities. I don't have time." Hazelwood held up his hand to quiet John, finished sipping his tea, then set down the mug.
"You'll want to see this."
"I don't see anything," John said, irritated as he looked about the room. John knew he was being rude, but all he wanted to do was leave. Just seeing his mentor's face brought back the feelings of guilt.
"Maybe you can't see what you don't believe."
John pushed away from the table. "I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't have come."
"John, sit,"
Hazelwood said with the same force he used on his more unruly students.
"You don't want to help me?"
I'm sorry. Tell me what you want."
"I want the expert of rare books to verify my greatest find, the one you and I have been discussing since the day we first met."
John perked up, recalling his first visit to Hazelwood's office. John had been a sophomore and was desperately trying to get into Hazelwood's class, Lost Books of the Ancient World. He tried to remember the list Hazelwood had compiled and hung on his office wall. Which one? You haven't found the unedited Taming of the Shrew. Shakespeare had always been Hazelwood's favorite, even though he'd spent the better part of a decade trying to disprove the bard's authorship on classics such as Macbeth. Hazelwood shook his head and got up from the table to take down the painting that hung between the two largest bookcases. A safe. He dialed in the combination.
"Even better."
John couldn't begin to think what could be better. Shakespeare's comedies, histories, and tragedies had sold for over $6 million, a dozen times more than John's most lucrative find. If it was much better than that, it explained Hazelwood's friendly disposition and forgiving attitude. Don't tell me it's a Da Vinci. John guessed as Hazelwood opened the safe's door.
"You won't guess."
Hazelwood slipped on a pair of latex gloves he kept in the safe. John leaned forward in his chair but couldn't identify the cover of the thick book Hazelwood extricated from the safe. Its glossy black binding with red letters looked to be something from the latter half of the 20th century. Whatever it was, it couldn't be more than 60 years old, and as far as he knew, nothing of much value had been produced that recently. When he looked at Hazelwood's crooked smile, he wondered if perhaps the old man had lost it. Holding the book so John couldn't see the title, Hazelwood handed him a pair of gloves. Once he had them on, Hazelwood set the book on the placemat before John. Stephen King's The Stand. Complete and uncut. Not even a first edition. And probably only worth the $27 any store would charge for it. "If this is a joke, I don't much appreciate it," John said. "You said this was something I had to see."
"How many times have you been told not to judge a book by its cover? Surely you, of all people, should know that."
John breathed through his nose, reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out his reading glasses. As he slipped them on, he examined the cover, searched for anomalies and imperfections that could raise the value, but he couldn't detect a single one. "What exactly am I looking for, Arthur?" Hazelwood returned to his seat and took another sip of tea.
"Open it. Tell me what you see."
Exaggerating in order to humor Hazelwood, John lifted the cover with the utmost care. The smell of rotten meat wafted from the title page, and immediately brought tears to his eyes. John turned his head to the side and slammed the book shut. What the hell was that? John wiped the spit from his mouth, realized he could no longer smell the foul stench. All he smelled was the tea. Hazelwood offered his infuriating smile.
"You tell me,"
he said, ever the teacher. It smelled like death inside a toilet.
"That's aptly put,"
Hazelwood said, almost to himself. So what is it? Instead of answering John, Hazelwood instructed him to open the book again. John steadied his stomach and prepared for the gut-wrenching smell as he opened the cover. But this time there was nothing except the aroma of aged paper. But it... John trailed off helplessly, looking up at Hazelwood for an explanation.
"Read the details inside the cover. See anything interesting?"
John wasn't familiar with many of King's works, but he had read this book after the miniseries had come out. Everything, as far as he could tell, seemed to be in order as he scanned the page. Then he came to the copyright date, 19666. His first thought was that someone had accidentally hit the 6 key one too many times. But then he considered the newer-looking cover. How old is King?
60 or so.
He wrote this as a teenager?
Not quite. The official copyright was 1978.
Interesting, John said, not all that impressed by one mistype. How many of these were printed with this date?
You're looking at it.
Just the one? Hazelwood motioned to the book.
Keep going.
Annoyed, but more than intrigued, John turned the page and read the dedication aloud. To all my true believers, may your fate be revealed. John looked to Hazelwood and asked, Do you have another copy of this book? As if reading John's mind, Hazelwood recited,
For Tabby, this dark chest of wonders. That's the original dedication. The one I'm sure you'd read as a younger man.
John didn't want to jump to an irrational and impossible conclusion. He'd needed more proof before he could even acknowledge the question the dedication sparked. He'd heard this dedication countless times, but it had been years since Hazelwood discussed it. To all my true believers, may your fate be revealed. Anything else? John asked, knowing he needed more than a dedication to even begin to entertain what Hazelwood was suggesting. Hazelwood nodded.
If you need more convincing, that is no problem. Be assured, you have the book in front of you.
With one hand ready to turn the page, John said, Professor, you and I both know it doesn't exist. This might meet some of the so-called criteria, but this is not...
All I ask is that you hold your judgment until you've finished the examination.
This is what you want me to believe, isn't it? That this is the book of Revelation? John wasn't referring to the one from the Bible, but the original written a century before the New Testament. Legend said it had been burned over 1 million times, but it couldn't be destroyed. Instead, it found its way into other books, hiding in the pages of lesser works.
That's not what I want you to believe, Hazelwood said. It's what I want you to acknowledge. It's what I want you to verify.
I can't verify a myth.
Yes, you can. And you will. You will verify that this is real, that this is here, and that both you and your book were mistaken.
John started to close the cover, but Hazelwood told him to stop.
What are you afraid of, John? If it's just a hoax, as you claim, then the Book of Revelation doesn't exist. But there's no harm in checking, is there? It seems to me that you would want to do that. Look at it as me giving you another chance to disprove me, to embarrass me once again.
I didn't write my book to embarrass you.
But you did. Now verify my finding, or disprove it," Hazelwood insisted, staring at John. This wasn't a simple request, and both men knew it. Still, Hazelwood wasn't about to let John walk out the door. "You owe me that." An unexplainable panic surged through John's body, urging him to run. It had been a mistake to come here, but he was here. The professor deserved his time. Even though John's book had been accurate, he still should have told his mentor what he was publishing. Hazelwood had discovered his pupil's writing the same way as everyone else, in the newspaper. John acquiesced, figuring he could do a quick examination of the book and be done with the whole mess. John looked at the book, then back at Hazelwood. "After I prove this is not the book you've been spending your whole life in search of, you'll let me go and I'll owe you nothing?" "Let you go?" Hazelwood laughed. You're not being held. I'm simply requesting a small favor from an old friend, the preeminent authority on fakes, forgeries, and fables." John's guilt reached nauseating proportions. "Fine, let's do this." He turned past the author's note and browsed over the preface. What else is there? Another typo, an inscription? "Turn to a page in Chapter 1. John did as he was told. "So what am I looking for?" "What page are you on?" There was a number 1 in the middle of the footer at the bottom of the left-hand page, but a 5 on the page beside it. John began speed-reading the page, searching for any kind of abnormality. Everything appeared just as he'd read it in his dog-eared copy, when suddenly, across the page, 5 non-consecutive words transformed from black to bright red. The words then made their way toward the header. John mumbled his disbelief. "Yes?" Hazelwood said giddily. "What is this?" John asked. But before Hazelwood answered, John looked at the old man and said, "Okay, nice trick. Okay, well done. How did you manage that?" "I didn't do anything." "The ink turns color when the air hits it, or is it the temperature change?" Hazelwood smiled. "It's no trick. What does it say?" Reluctantly, John read the highlighted words to himself. "Respect, don't, him, you." Always quick with puzzles, he rearranged the order of the words. "You don't respect him." Instead of telling Hazelwood this, though, he shook his head and said, "I'm surprised you'd sink that low." "There's no deception. I have no idea what it reads." "Then I'm even sadder, because either you've been duped this easily or you think I'm an idiot." Hazelwood didn't seem bothered by John's disbelief. "Try another page." "Which one?" "Your choice." Figuring Hazelwood would direct him to specific doctored pages, John was surprised to be given a choice, but only slightly. "Don't tell me you fixed every page. This had to cost some money." "Not to mention the amount of time it would take to do what you're suggesting I did." Hazelwood made a good point. But it only made the situation more pathetic. Any page, right? "Anyone you choose. Be my guest." John flipped through a few dozen pages before stopping. Hazelwood asked him what number he'd landed on. John said, "It should read 47, but there's only a 2. A mistake, but not a very revealing one." "It's no mistake. You don't see anything else?" John adjusted his eyes. Seemingly random words slowly turned from black to red, then moved to the top of the page. "Back is coming, she not." It didn't take John long to rearrange them. She is not coming back. John fought to keep from grabbing the heartless bastard by the throat. Gritting his teeth and staring at the man, he said,
This is no longer funny.
I agree. It isn't. Recognize what you have in front of you. Or are you truly blind?
John's hands couldn't stop shaking. Even after what had happened because of his book, John was unable to believe the man would cross the line and bring Susan into the hoax.
If you recall, you stopped at that page. I didn't direct you to it. Please tell me what it reads.
His voice seemed to be truly interested, not a trace of malice. Hazelwood had never been a good bluff, so John started to wonder if maybe he wasn't trying to pull off some sinister prank. It says she's not coming back.
Do you think it means Susan, or might there be someone else?
There's only Susan. John remembered that they were talking about their honeymoon plans the morning before she'd vanished. He'd finally given in and told her that they could go to Fiji like she wanted. But it doesn't matter what appears, because either you or one of your friends put this here.
You suppose it's luck that you turned to that exact page?
John motioned toward the book. It's probably on every page.
Oh, I assure you, it isn't.
So you admit you know what's on the pages?
What I admit is the Book of Revelation is able to draw the chosen to it. It must be calling to you. Do you feel its pull at the back of your mind?
John wanted to tell the old kook he was out of his head, that he should be locked up in an asylum. But there was a tug, one that made him want to turn the page. He shook his head to clear his thoughts, upset that he had been so gullible as to consider Hazelwood's suggestion. There was no pull, it was just a book.
Why don't you try another?
Hazelwood asked.
Afraid of what you might find?
This doesn't prove a thing. You are worse than one of those TV psychics. These revelations could apply to anyone.
Turn to another page. I won't take much more of your time.
John flipped through the book and stopped a few pages into chapter 42. Even though he was more than a third of the way through the thick book, the page number in the footer was only 3, and the one next to it was 389. If the next page he turns to was 4, then he at least had to consider the possibility of the book's legitimacy. He could not think of any way Hazelwood might have rigged the pagination.
What page are you on?
Hazelwood asked. Your guess is as good as mine.
What does the number say?
Come on, how'd you do it?
Do you remember what I taught you?
John flashed through the years of information he'd gathered through their chats, many taking place right here in this room. He tried to remember anything concerning the book and pages. Something clicked. There were some who said the book would only give 4 revelations a day, each numbered accordingly. He pushed this realization from his thoughts and examined the red words on the page. This one was too simple. Scared, is, use, to, he, pistol, the. John had completely forgotten about the nickel-plated Derringer that Hazelwood had kept on his desk. It was 100 years old and always under glass, but Hazelwood had claimed it still worked.
Anything interesting, John?
John shook his head and continued to stare at the book, trying to collect himself. As he stared at the blood-red words, an internal alarm sounded, his logic and rationality struggling to hold precedence. But it was a losing battle. The book kept calling him, warning him to beware, to stop the crazy old man before it was too late.
John, I need to know. It looks as if you found something of interest.
John picked up his mug and drank as he observed the professor. He hadn't noticed it before, but there was a small bulge under Hazelwood's jacket on the left side of his chest. It was probably just a notepad or a handkerchief, but John supposed it was large enough to be the Derringer. In an attempt to distract the old man, John asked Hazelwood if he would mind getting him some more tea. The man answered that he would be glad to. Hazelwood got up from the table with his eerie smile and turned his back to retrieve the teapot. John looked around for the weapon. On the remote chance that Hazelwood was carrying a concealed gun, John needed something. Hazelwood was old and slow. He couldn't forget that the feeble man coming back with the tea had threatened to kill him the last time they met. Hazelwood seemed very definite on that subject. As Hazelwood poured John's tea, making a point not to look at the book, John leaned forward, trying to peek inside his mentor's frayed jacket. He couldn't tell what was inside. Then Hazelwood returned the pot to its cart. The old man's wife had died shortly after the release of John's book. It wouldn't be surprising if the professor had blamed John for her death as well. A devastating loss could change a man and make him do things he wouldn't have considered before. Now that Susan was gone, John knew this to be very true. Before today, he rarely entertained violent thoughts. But inside this study, he was dreaming of strangling the demented son of a bitch sitting across from him. "You're not going to drink it?" I was just letting it cool." John picked up his mug and brought it to his lips, wondering if the tea could be poisoned. Could that be what was causing the violent thoughts, making him consider the book to be real? "Actually, I think it needs another moment." He set the mug in front of him. Hazelwood shrugged and drank from his own cup, the same tea that was in John's mug. Or was it? "What do you say to opening up one last page? I promise it'll be the last one." "But it only gives 4 a day, right? Are you sure we should rush to the end?" John's eyes drifted to the cart and the small butter knife. He wondered if he could reach it before the old man drew. 4 per person, yes," Hazelwood said. "So maybe we should do yours next." "Not necessary. I just need you to verify that it is the book. I take it that you're still not convinced." "That it is the Book of Revelation? You told me yourself that it only gives revelations to one who has killed another. I've never harmed a soul in my life." "Physically, maybe," Hazelwood said, the overwhelming sadness in his voice hanging over the room. Feeling he had the man on the ropes, John said, "At least tell me how you did it." "Turn to a new page, and I promise to explain everything." John agreed and flipped further into the book. He stopped and stared at the 4 in the footer that should have read 932. Hazelwood stood and said, "If the book is not real, then how to explain this?" "What?" John asked, distracted as he studied the letters changing color in front of him. "Going, he's, kill, to, you." "Will you agree that the book is real if the revelations prove to be true?" John looked up from the book in time to see Hazelwood reach for the object inside of his jacket. Before the old man could pull out a gun, John shoved the table into Hazelwood's chest. John, now on his feet, came charging and grabbed the old man. Hazelwood caught his breath, motioned the hand underneath his jacket. "What do you think I have in here?" "Don't move." "Well, this isn't going to be very fun. I have something to show you." "Don't move," John repeated. "You're acting like I'm going to kill someone." "Are you?" "I'm not going to kill anyone." Hazelwood grinned. "Not anyone else," he said. "Anyone else? What are you talking about?" "Don't worry, John. I won't hurt you." "Shut up and slowly bring your hand out from the jacket." "I had to do it, Jonathan," Hazelwood said, without making a move to withdraw his hand. "Shut up!" John screamed, pulling Hazelwood's hand away before reaching in himself. "I wasn't an evil man, I swear it. They say you have to be evil to get it to work. They say the book calls you if you look long enough." Hazelwood tried to reach in his jacket. "Stop!" John shouted. Leave your hand where it is.
But it's the proof you need in order to believe. Go ahead. Take it.
John felt something in his hand. Not a gun, but an envelope. It was black. Hazelwood let out a raspy sigh and licked his lips.
You'll want to see this.
John simply stared at the professor. Then his eyes moved to the envelope. The old man's fingers pushed it on John.
Open it. I offer your proof.
John tore it open.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for coming tonight. For heeding the call.
John hesitated, wondered what could be inside the black envelope. Slowly he tipped it to the side and caught the necklace sliding out. He didn't need to see the engraving on the locket to know whose neck it had adorned. Another small object dropped to the floor and bounced off his shoe. Susan's 2-carat engagement ring. John turned on the professor, ready to grab him by the neck and squeeze.
In the envelope, Jonathan, look,
Hazelwood whispered. He let the necklace fall from his hand and peered inside. There was a folded Polaroid. It had caused the lump under Hazelwood's jacket. Hazelwood struggled to keep his eyes open.
Go on, Jonathan. Go ahead and look inside.
John pulled out the photo, the envelope fluttering to the ground.
I do thank you, Jonathan. Taking her enabled me to find this book, and soon you'll take its burden from me.
Hazelwood took a ragged breath.
Tell me, Jonathan, when did you know where she was? Was it before or after you walked into my house?
That smell. Susan's perfume. He'd been paying too much attention to Hazelwood to realize that it was his fiancée's. The blood-red words. Hazelwood had caused her death. John turned the photo over in his fingers, unable to open it and look at the image inside.
I did what I had to do, Jonathan. Isn't that what you once taught me?
John unfolded the photo. Susan lay on her back, her eyes open. There was a hole a few inches above her right eye. Blood pooled beneath her beautiful blonde hair splayed on the hardwood floor. The same floor he was standing on. Shaking, his mind numb, John reached out and wrapped his finger around his mentor's throat and squeezed. Felt his thumbs denting the larynx, the fleshy tissue stretching under the pressure as Hazelwood's breaths turned wet. John's eyes stayed locked on the old man's face as Hazelwood's fingers clawed at his wrists. He lowered the old man to the floor and continued to squeeze until he felt his fingers tingle. The life finally left his old friend's eyes, and John turned to the book, which had fallen to the floor. Page 166 was now numbered 1. The words changed color before his eyes. Her, goodbye, tell, run. The words made chillingly perfect sense. This truly was the Book of Revelation. John walked out of the room and saw his love's body curled up under a table. He fell to his knees and kissed her cold hand. He said his goodbyes and stifled his sobs. He sat there for hours until his legs fell asleep. Then he lay down next to her and recalled the final word. Run.